United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We've got the agenda ahead of us. We got one addition, and that's for the back pocket brewery application. We've got to go through those. Is there any other additions, corrections, deletions?
With that addition, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, got a motion. We need a second.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. With that, we've got the minutes from last Monday's board meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
I reviewed the minutes, and they read very well. If there's no corrections or additions, I'll move to approve them as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Recorders, do we need to get Kathy? Yep.
Betcha.
Morning, Kathy.
I did have to make a
Morning, Kathy.
correction on last year's. So
Is
I
it
went
last
ahead-
year's?
On last
On
year's.
one,
There's-
one or all of them?
What do you
On
mean?
the whole thing, or?
Just on one.
Just on one?
Mhm.
I don't know if we need new ones for that. but
Oh, I printed new ones.
We've got the,
You got the updated version?
I put the wrong figure in from last year when I was going back, and so you have the correct numbers. We're up, our recording documents are down, revenue was up. Vital records, we were up on income on that. So we came out a little bit ahead, even though our documents were down. We had some large property transfers. And then for the state on sales tax, a lot of purchases and stuff with boats and stuff, so we're actually up on what we sent to the state along with vital statistics.
Well, thank you for doing the
Comparison.
comparison.
Yeah, the bottom numbers were correct, it was just a number up on top. That was wrong.
So I did highlight the one that was for year end
Oh.
that you have.
And then,
Yes.
yeah,
And then,
the,
okay. There's two separate reports there.
yeah, and the annual.
yeah, and where it says quarter for the year right here, of course.
That's the year end, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I put.
So, any questions?
Makes it much more clear to me now.
Yeah, it does.
Like I said, the bottom number was right, it was just a number up on
Yeah,
top.
I-
And I was looking at it this morning and I thought that does not add up. But fairly consistent income.
Mhm. Yeah.
Down a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's an ebb and
Like
flow
I said,
thing.
with recording.
Yep.
And I, earlier when you stopped in, I was telling them, there, with Recorders Association, there will be some changes. At this time, we don't charge for groundwater hazard statements. There's nothing in the code that says we have to do that for free. So everybody's been getting a really good deal for a long time, so we will start charging first of the year.
What have other counties been doing?
No one has been charging. So this is across the board, and all the counties will start charging for groundwater.
How much will they charge, Kathy?
It'll be the same as other documents. So a 2-page groundwater is $12. That's income that we've not been getting that we should have been.
So how many of those do you get?
If you look at the deeds, our transfers,
Yeah, you have a dollar figure there.
we have a dollar figure, but that dollar, so far, 1,400. Because we get
Okay.
for the transfer fee, that's $5 for transfer fee per
Okay.
property, or per parcel. So divide that by 5, and that's what would, and then times 12 would be what we have per
Sure.
quarter.
Gotcha.
There's been a change in the legislation as far as partitioning of land and, for example, if two people inherit a farm, you know, it was difficult to have them partitioned, have divided up fairly
Mhm.
to each settlement. There's been a law change of that. Do you notice any change in your,
No.
because of that?
No, usually if
It
we have
cau-
questions, we have to.
Create more
attorney.
settlements out of court and things like that.
The attorneys are really good about, you know, if I have a question, I can call and talk to them and ask them what's going on.
Probably won't see this ahead of time, but just notice if it's effective, more changes or more settlements.
Probably an uptick in.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they stay on top of it, and the association's really good on staying on top of making sure we all know what's going on. And, of course, I can always talk to the Department of Revenue. Any questions?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
There are none. Motion to approve the quarterly report?
Make a motion to approve Recorder's quarterly report.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Now, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Can I get a stamp on the quarterly one here?
Yeah. Okay, with that, we'll go down to item number 2, is to consider approve rag-bar vendor application for the IKAM Manning CYO. And that's in your packet.
You guys all have a copy of that. Looks like we're gonna sell bottled water with flavor packets and rubber wristbands from 7 to 1 on 30297 Granite Avenue.
Everything looks in order.
Yeah, they have a copy of the insurance and, yeah.
Come through the front door, I'll move that be approved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the vendor permit application. Or do we want to do the back pocket brewery one, or we do that separate?
You wanna maybe do them separate?
Okay, we'll just go with this one. We got the motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
You don't have copies of these because they came in late Friday, but these are 2 for Back Pocket Brewing. We've already approved their liquor permits through the state. First one I'll pass around here is at 33126 330th Street, Coon Rapids. Draft beer, draft root beer, open from 8 to 4:30. That's that one. And then the other one is the one we just approved. Same thing, beer, root beer, 8 to 4 are the hours, 30294 Granite Avenue, Manning. I believe they all have, they have their insurance thing.
Insurance was,
Yep, it's on
insurance
the
was
back, so-
attached to that one.
Yep, so there's that one as
Mhm.
well.
That'll be right across from ICAM one.
That's it.
see.
Really?
97, 94.
Yeah, it is.
Not gotta be.
Okay.
Yeah, and none of them are on, you know, we didn't want them on
141 or
141 or 71, neither one are, so.
So you can take the water drinkers and the beer drinkers and see how they perform, and they get back on track.
So we're just gonna approve the one then,
Yeah.
for Coon Rapids, is that what we're gonna do, or?
I'd like to do each of those separate, so we'll do a motion.
But we already did one though, didn't we?
We didn't approve the county level permit, we just approved the
Beer.
liquor license.
Beer.
Oh, I see, sure, gotcha.
So these
We
are
didn't
just
approve
the
the
county
permit
level
itself,
ones.
yeah, the vendor permit.
And what I'll do
Yeah.
is, if they do are all approved, I'll get Marty to stamp them, and then I'll send them a copy of the application that it was approved, and I'll have them post that at their booth, so if they do get checked by the state, they'll know they came through the county liquor, so.
So you wanna do those in
I'd
separate
like to do the
motions?
Coon one and the
Okay.
Manning one separate.
Okay.
Just let me know which one you're doing, so I
Okay.
can make it right in minutes.
Let's start off with the Manning one first, as far as we need a motion to approve that one.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Okay, got a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Now, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we'll go to the one down by Coon Rapids. Get a motion to approve that one.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
So you can stamp that as well.
Marty's in the stand.
Yeah.
Are you aware of any counties that are not allowing vendors?
I thought Monona wasn't, but then somebody argued with me that they were, so I'm not gonna.
I think there was a couple of them were telling not doing it, and then they kinda got enough flack.
I know Crawford was talking about not doing it, and they changed their mind.
Well, I could see the argument, you are pulling people away from the small towns and.
Yep.
I
Monona
don't
County
know what the right
did away
answer
with
is.
it.
Bicycle riders.
They
tell me
didn't do
that.
it, but Ottawa, the city of Ottawa,
Get it?
yeah. I mean,
I wonder if
They're
the
not-
small towns get.
it's not gonna be dry in Ottawa, I don't think,
No,
on
I
Saturday
don't-
night.
I don't think so. Okay, with that, we'll go down to item number 3, is the approved plat. We've got one for section 26 of Arcadia Township, and that's in your packet.
And there should be one on the backside, Maple River.
And Maple River one.
I will make a motion to approve the two plats. One is just the movement of the line, and then the other one is acreage boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw them. Splitting off the building site off the farm there. I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the 2 plats. Any other discussion? Now, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is Dave here yet or not?
No,
Oh,
it's
no, we got
sheriff,
sheriff's,
yeah.
we got sheriff's quarterly report. Ken?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Ken.
Everybody got a copy of her?
Yep.
All right, from April through the end of June, the sheriff's office took in $19,262.92. And after disbursements were made for weapons permits, that left us with a total of $13,647.07 that we took in for those 3 months.
How's that compare with other quarters again?
Oh, about average, So, weapons permits are, they just remain pretty steady. We have a little increase in them. I think probably in the last couple of months, we maybe had 100 and some new permits. So, but there's also probably that many people that don't renew theirs also, due to various reasons. But the whole's pretty steady, so.
Anything jumped out at you?
Nothing at all. The backside of that sheet is just our total revenues for the year. Does not show disbursements at all. Between mileage, county fees, and miscellaneous monies, the sheriff's office took in $84,137.71 for the entire fiscal year.
Was there a step-up program in July? Was there a step-up program in July or late June? that you
Traffic
partici-
enforcement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you participate in?
Yes.
How'd that go?
We participate in all those. Good. You know, we're not out there to write a ton of tickets,
Yeah.
just more or less bring awareness. We always do a public awareness campaign ahead of time, let people know when we're gonna be doing it, what the periods are from, just make sure they have their seat belts on and obey all the traffic laws. Questions about any of that?
I'll make a motion to approve the sheriff's report.
I'll second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? If not, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Ken.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
You were a scrap worker.
Starting real low in ink.
Popular guy today.
We done with it today?
Okay. Can you sign a date?
You got it.
No, he's on after the Motorola presentation.
Do we want to fill in, or do we want to do the Motorola early?
Those are if they're ready.
They all here.
Is
Are you
everybody
guys
here?
all here? Do you want to start the presentation? Okay with that?
You're ready, whatever.
Okay, and we got time, so with that, we'll go to the Iowa statewide inoperable communication system presentation from Motorola. We got Jason and Brian and Bob.
Brian and Dan Flynn.
Okay, and Dan, welcome.
So let Jason kind of set the table here while I get this plugged in.
Okay.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to update the board on, and give you a little background on the county's radio system, where it came from, kind of its current condition, and then we'll move into hearing from Motorola about what our future could look like. So the current radio system that we use today was adopted sometime in the late 70s, early 80s. It is VHF analog is the frequency band that's used and the technology that's used for that. And when it was deployed originally, portable coverage was very limited at that time. It would have been limited to in close proximity to the tower within and around Carroll. And then portable coverage would have been limited to radio type communications between radios that are in close proximity to one another, like on the scene at an event. Originally, we shared a law enforcement channel with two other counties that were neighboring us. And interference between the operations of those different counties was common. In the late 90s, around about 2000, the county got our own law enforcement frequency and deployed various repeaters throughout the county. Those repeaters are mostly located on water towers, on existing structures that already existed, or a co-op, something to that effect. Most are about 80 to 100 feet in the air for the antenna. Users must switch their radio channels as they move throughout the county in order to select what repeater they're going to operate on. So if they move to a different area of the county, especially when they're on their portable, they've got to decide what channel to kind of select based on where they're located. Many fire department mobile radios are lower power radios, and so as they move away from their home area to interoperate with neighboring departments, they oftentimes have to switch even their mobile radio. And law enforcement at times, when they get into some fringe areas, have to switch their mobile radio to a repeater that's closer. In the early 2000s, the Carroll Police Department got a separate radio channel with their own repeater for their use in Carroll. I think that was mainly, from what I understand, a traffic issue so that the Sheriff's Department, Manning, Coon Rapids, could get a word in edgewise when Carroll was busy. Narrow banding took effect in about 2012. This reduced the effective range of the radios so that the signal didn't seem to travel as far, and the fringe areas seemed to get bigger and the effective area seemed to get smaller. There's also been increasing interference in the VHF band, so that the noise on the channel and the radio skip that's experienced has increased over the years. And this is something that VHF users everywhere experience. So our counties all the counties like ours that are using VHF have these same types of issues. In approximately 2014, the county law enforcement repeaters throughout the county were replaced by the 911 board. They paid to do that. The little, if any, improvement was gained for their expense that they spent on this, and therefore a plan to replace the fire repeaters was postponed and reevaluated at that time. The thought was, if we didn't see a whole lot of improvement for law enforcement, let's not go spending good money after bad and spending them on the fire repeaters. So the work there was to maintain those pieces of equipment rather than to replace them. From time to time, we've experienced various radio issues in the county. In approximately 2009, I believe it was, there was Christmas ice storms. This took out power to several repeater sites. In order to get those repeater sites back online, portable generators had to be taken to the repeater site, plugged in, and maintained. I think they had to be fueled every 12 hours or something like that, maybe less. In 2014, we had electrical failures at the Coon Rapids tower site that was traced to water infiltration. The repeaters in that site are located inside the base of the water tower, so water is ever present at that location. So that was an issue there. Coax cable for one of the repeaters in Waynesboro rotted away and fell off the tower at one point. This wasn't noticed until the repeater wasn't working and we investigated why it wasn't working. So in May of 2015, there was a storm that went through the northern part of the county. It went on to create a tornado in Lake City. That storm took out power to Breda and Lanesboro and hindered communications for our departments that were responding to Lake City to assist. Other than that, radio communications have commonly broken down during disasters. Sometimes this can be traced to user error and high traffic volume during those exercises. Other times it's more a limitation of the radio system that we're kind of using. So bearing all these things in mind, we knew that the IS6 platform was something that was on the horizon, and the 911 board has had discussions, and I've tried to keep the Communications Commission and the 911 board updated about the progress of that radio system. It's set to go live this fall, and so about 6 months ago we just started to have conversations with Motorola about what an engineered solution with that system, integrating with that system, partnering with the state would look like for us, rather than going out and building ourselves as an island in some other technology, be it VHF and digital or something else. The thought was the best solution would be to integrate with the statewide system. So that's kind of what's brought us here today. A couple of points of note. I want to make sure that the board understands this is not an unfunded mandate of any kind from the state. We do not have to, we don't have to build out enhancements locally on Essex. There's nobody requiring us to do that. We will have to interoperate with that system somehow. That could mean we integrate at the console level, at the radio level, and things like that are all options. So just so that that's well understood. Any questions for me about any of that or anything that I glossed over that is confusing?
Can you explain the narrow banding situation?
So the frequencies are spaced by a certain bandwidth so that they don't overlap one another, so that when you talk on your frequency, you have a certain length of bandwidth that you can use in order so that your communications are kept separate from somebody that's on an adjacent frequency. It used to be 25 kilohertz. In 2012, they cut it in half and said it's going to be 12.5 kilohertz. So at that time, any equipment that wasn't narrow bandable had to be replaced, and everybody started operating within that narrow band framework. This frees up more frequencies. That's been part of the problem with VHF, is that the frequencies were pretty much all used up, and there wasn't anything free anymore. So this frees up frequencies that are between all the old frequencies in that new space created by narrowing the band. You know, whoever they is, kind of said it wouldn't affect radio coverage, and that seems to be not the case. Since narrow banding, we've noticed a reduced effectiveness in our range. If we were to get narrow banded again, we'd be looking at a complete equipment replace again, and we'd have to switch to a digital technology in order to be compliant, because analog no longer works in any more narrow of a bandwidth than the 12.5. So it probably will happen someday, but there's no timeline.
I'm assuming that'd probably be the FCC, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the they would be
Yeah.
federal.
If I may, when that narrow band requirement came in 2012, as Jason was saying, it basically took that 25 kilohertz pipe and cut it in half to 12.5, doubled up the frequencies. And one of the effects of that is that the voice just doesn't carry as far when it's going down that narrower pipe, and so that circle tightened down a little bit. And the on-site applications that we worked with businesses and the like rarely was a problem. When you're working with the sheriff's department or county-wide applications, when that donut is this big, and if you shave it off by even just a couple miles, you notice it when it's out there, and it's not unique to Carroll County. It's a noticeable effect for anybody that's doing area-wide or wide area communications across the country, both in VHF and the UHF band.
And what happens when we're in analog, as you get to the fringe area, you might be able to key up, you might be able to open the transceiver on the other end of the radio, but the intelligible voice quality goes down the further you get away from the other receiving radio. So it's the kind of the difference between digital and analog. If we remember when televisions were an analog signal and you had the rabbit ears and you tuned in and it was fuzzy, that's an analog signal. When the FCC switched the television stations over to digital, now the signal is either you have it or you don't. You might see that kind of pixelated picture or something, but it's pretty much freezes until you get it back. Those of us that are RVers and campers are pretty familiar with that, or if you don't have cable at home, you experience that. And so it's the same thing holds true in radio communications. If we're on a digital signal, you get kind of the same quality of signal or voice all the way out to the edge of the coverage, instead of it kind of gradually getting worse and worse until we don't have intelligible voice anymore.
Did you say in the 90s they made a change, and now in 12 they've made a change?
So in the 90s is when in the late 90s, like 99, 2000, somewhere in that time frame, is when the county started using repeaters throughout the county. Fire might have been first. I wasn't actively involved at the time, but I was aware of it, I guess. And then right around 2000, 2001, somewhere in that time frame, maybe it was 99, the county repeaters were set up, and so that's kind of when that sort of thing happened. I don't know if that was a radio vendor, I suspect that at that time it was the radio vendor saying, oh, well, let's put some repeaters here, here, and here, and we'll increase your radio coverage. I don't believe it was ever kind of an engineered, let's make sure that we have coverage everywhere. It was kind of a best attempt, effort at trying to increase the coverage.
Well, this new state radio, is this that they've put out, let me ask you this, is this a tower to, what's the state requiring? A tower to vehicle, tower to handheld?
And I can answer some of those in my presentation, but yeah, the state system itself is built out on a mobile platform, so a mobile radio. I mean, they have to give you a 95% coverage baseline across the state. So I can kind of get into that in my presentation and maybe help fill some of those gaps. And definitely can take some more questions then or after.
And we've anticipated that this state system was coming. The 911 board obtained kind of a one-time grant opportunity early 2017. And then summer of 2017, we deployed new radios for all the law enforcement agencies in the county. So the grant covered half of the cost. 911 covered part of the matching funds, and each agency covered part of those matching funds. So that we replaced all of the law enforcement radios except for conservation officers. We replaced all of those radios so that the radios that they have now are dual band capable. They're capable of the system that we use today, and they're capable of whatever system, be it IS-6 or something else, that we might go to in the future, so that we're trying to prepare, future-proof their radios a little bit in preparation for the IS-6 platform. If nothing else, and all they use it for is interoperability when we go out of county or working with the state on something, they can do it at the radio level. If we don't have radios, say like fire, for example, then we're going to need to have a transmitter. At minimum, we're going to need to put a transmitter on our current system and then patch in those radios through our console system. The limitation of that is they have to be on our system. They have to be able to get into a transmitter that the comm center can hear in order to do that. So it's not the most ideal situation, but that is an option that we have in front of us going forward that we can do. So we can even do that operationally if we think that that's necessary. There's lots of options in front of us today, and I'm not recommending any one option over another. We're here to bring you guys the information and bring you guys up to speed with everything that's going on. So with that, I'll let Brian take over.
So thank you very much for allowing us the time to come in and present to you. My name is Brian Flynn. I'm a senior account manager with Motorola. With me today I have Dan Pohl, the area sales manager for Iowa, and then I have Bob Stephanie, who works with D&D, who is your rep for your local radio service. So, today I'm just going to be speaking about the statewide system, the Iowa Statewide Interoperable Communication System, otherwise known as ISIX. I'll try to respect your time here so I can hurry up or slow down, whatever works for you in terms of answering questions. And then I'll also specifically go into an engineered solution for Carroll County after going over the information that Jason has provided, as well as then that being validated at the last 911 committee meeting with a lot of the users throughout the county, and then definitely open it up for questions from there. So feel free to interrupt or ask as we go along too. So the IS-6 background itself, the challenge from a statewide level and even from county level that Jason touched on is that there's been disparate radio systems that make interoperability very difficult. It really does hamper efficiencies, and then also there is a need for seamless coverage, not only from a county level but from a state level. The response has been that Motorola, an RFP came out for the state of Iowa. Motorola was fortunate enough to be chosen to move forward as the vendor to build out the statewide system, and that was at the end of 2015. The system itself does have several standards built into it. It is a P25 radio system, and what that means is basically it is a 7800 TDMA public safety grade radio system. It is not a conventional analog system. It's not even a standard so-called digital system. It is a P25 grade system that has been basically set forth, not only from the United States, but then all over the world as a public safety grade radio system. So just to give you some background on Motorola, you probably have heard of us in terms of cell phones or radios, things like that, but we are about to have our 90th anniversary in the radio communications area. This is just showing a map snapshot of the other statewide systems that Motorola has actually implemented and helped put together. There are some darker gray areas those are state systems that are not Motorola. I do want to point out that Florida is actually going blue. Just recently, we did win that state system. That's important to note because that is our largest competitor's home state, and they actually did have a statewide system in place, and the state chose to replace the existing statewide system with a new Motorola system. This is just trying to show you that this is not our first rodeo, and that we have been able to do this for a long time, and we'll continue to support it moving forward. So the E6 platform, overall, to your question, it is an interoperability platform. It is the largest P25 system in the state. When it's actually on now and getting built out, but in terms of, to Jason's point, it's being accepted by the state of a goal of third quarter to early fourth quarter, this fall basically, that the state will take over the system itself. It's a starting point for operability. And what I mean by that is the state system itself is built on interoperability. So to your question earlier, is mobile radio coverage of 95% across the state. What that means is that out of 100 times that someone keys up on their radio, whether it's in their car or on their hip, that it's gonna work 95 out of the 100 times. Now, I'll show you some coverage maps here soon. If you don't see something that's blue or green, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that it's not getting to that 95% threshold. So it might work 94, 93 times they key up. It could work, 20 or 30 or 0. Everyone kind of knows when you start seeing maps of your local area where in the river bottoms or things like that, radio coverage isn't there. This is just for everyone's knowledge. So this is a mobile radio. When we talk about mobile, it's a larger radio, has more wattage into it. It's put into either the front console area or the back of a police vehicle, fire engine vehicle, ambulance, things like that. So when we talk about mobile radios, mobile coverage, we're talking about one of these. And then these are called a portable radio, or put on your hip, be working outside of the car or inside of a building. When we talk about that, that's what we're talking about, portable coverage versus mobile coverage. So just kind of try to give that baseline there. The system itself is built for redundancy. I'll touch on that in terms of the brains or the cores of the system. And then it is a 700-800 megahertz frequency band system. So again, on the redundancy and the resiliency, the E6 platform does have 3 separate geo-redundant cores. That basically is the brains of the system. It is the most resilient system in the state. One thing to point out here, so let's say a natural disaster-wise or something, one core were to go down, the second core would then pick up the slack and be able to make sure that everyone is up and running. If for whatever reason another core went down, we do have the third. Iowa is rare in terms of all those other states that Motorola has put systems in for. I think we're either the only or one of just a couple that actually do have 3 cores versus just 2. So the redundancy is there. One of the things that I'll point out now, that one of the benefits of this, to Jason's point, if you were to build out your own system to replace, an aging system, you'll have to pay for your own core, your own brains of the system, and then the maintenance and upkeep of that. For here, the state is doing that on a core level and on the mobile baseline level throughout the state.
Kind of identify what the core is. It's that place where every conversation routes through, whether it's a tower in Page County or Westcom or wherever it might be, it's going to route through a core and then be routed back to everybody else that's out there on the system at the night. If you happen to lose one of those, there's 2 redundant ones. And to Brian's point, Nebraska, they have 2 cores. They have one in Lincoln, they have one in Kearney, so one backs up the other. Iowa's got an extra level of resiliency by having 3 cores on the system.
And that was done by the state in terms of in their bid process of the specs that they wanted. They wanted to make sure to have 3. So the state system itself, the core system or the backbone of the system, are 90+ sites scattered throughout the state. I'll show you a map of those locations. We will be coverage testing the middle of this summer, and basically what that means is that throughout the state, a couple 100,000 3/4 mile grid gets placed on the state, and it actually is a drive test through all those quadrants to be able to go, no go in terms of the coverage of that 95% reliability. The state is fully leveraging that for operations, so the state will not only be accepting the state system itself in the fall, but they also are going on the system itself in terms of Department of Public Safety, DOT, DNR. And then multiple other counties in parallel are also and I'll touch on this later in terms of identify some of those, are also building out system enhancements right now in parallel of the system itself going live this fall. What a system enhancement really means is basically layering on additional infrastructure and radio equipment, whether it be a tower or just radios, but to layer on top of what the state system is putting in. The state system really is putting in a backbone to basically make it less expensive for counties and local entities to be able to use the system than what it would be if they did it one-off on their own. So this is a quick little snapshot of the tower locations throughout the state. This is just a couple month old, just kind of talking about some of the sites are completed, some of them are in active build, some of them are utilizing existing vertical assets or towers for Iowa Public Television. I'd say 85% of all of the towers are newly constructed. A couple of them are leased sites from existing vertical towers or Iowa Public Television towers that were no longer being used that were on state property. As you'll see here in Carroll, there are actually 2 existing sites. One of the benefits that your county does have, one is what kind of layman's terms, it's a full-blown site where it actually has coverage coming out of it, and the additional site down south is more of a backhaul site to be able to help the system itself. And I'll kind of speak to that in a little bit. So as you can see, several counties, even around you, don't have a tower at all. So what that does is that there is no cookie cutter solution for a county or entity. I mean, 99 counties, it will look different for 99 different proposals or 99 different ways of decisions of making to be able to utilize the system. So what I mean by that is not only do you know your own logistics and topography and everything, when this state system is up and done, and I'll show you some coverage maps, your coverage from doing nothing will look a lot different than Audubon's coverage, or look a lot different than Warren County's coverage or anybody else's coverage, because it all depends on your county as well as are there existing towers getting put in by the state or not. So this is that 95% statewide mobile coverage, so through the vehicle throughout the state. Now you'll see these wide areas a lot of times are on a river bottom or on areas where there are rivers or creeks. 95% throughout the whole state. That doesn't mean necessarily it's 95% each county. Some counties might be closer to 90%, some counties might be closer to 100%. But this is just showing you that the state system itself is really putting together that full mobile backbone throughout the entire state. This is just a picture of one of the newly constructed sites. This actually happens to be your site here on the west side of Carroll. So in terms of ISSIC's ownership and control, this is a question that comes up as we've given different updates. The state system itself, they'll be maintaining those 90+ sites. They're maintaining the 3 geo-redundant cores. They'll maintain their own state radios that they're buying and putting out there into their fleets. They're maintaining that microwave connectivity. And then when the system is accepted this fall by the state, that's when the clock starts on the 10-year agreement that they have also signed and are going forward with Motorola. So all hardware and software upgrades to the state's 90+ sites will all be taken care of throughout those 10 years. So starting this fall for 10 years, basically at the end of that 10 years, they'll have brand new equipment and brand new software and updates in there put in. And then also their interoperability talk groups and channels, both regionally and statewide, moving forward. What Carroll County or any other county moving forward would be in charge of or have control over and responsible for would be any specific local enhancement sites that you, if you chose to build out or add on your own radios as you do now, and then your own dispatch consoles in the PSAP as well. So the cost benefits of choosing to go on to the state ISSIC systems, whether interoperability or definitely operability, is using the infrastructure that's already been paid for by the state, and you're able to tailor it and tweak it to your needs. Having the shared geo-redundant cores, again, not implementing or putting in your own, and then having to maintain those. There's no ongoing fees moving forward, whether it's frequency fees or radio fees. That's not always true for other systems that are out there. The mobile coverage platform, it's the largest P25 system in the state. And then no financial responsibility to update, like we said before, the state towers and cores. And then you're also, the state did a very good job, again, comparative to the other state systems that Motorola has put out there, is that they negotiated 50% off of radios but from Motorola in the state contract, and that's the biggest discount that any state has ever received. So just moving forward, you'd be able to buy not only now or in the future at that competitive bid price. So it has already been bid out and awarded to Motorola. So to access the ISIX site itself, and agreement would just need to be signed, move forward. There are no fees. This has already been done at a low level for Carroll County, and what that means is that the ISIX board, so the Interoperable State Board, has already approved for Carroll County to be able to utilize the existing state system for interoperability, basically meaning that using the existing radio the sheriff has on his hip right now, it is P25 compliant, and he would be able to interoperate with state agencies or other counties that are on the system right now at no additional charge. Basically, that means there's different levels, so that would be quote-unquote level 1, all the way up to a level 4, which would be full operability, not just interoperability, but day-to-day operations and building out an additional enhancements to fill in those coverage gaps throughout the state. County, excuse me. Here's a snapshot of the existing ISIX platform users. As you can see, there are several counties on here, both centrally, west, east, north, south, across the state, and then also the state and federal agencies that are going onto the system. And so you can see here, you got different emergency management, you got fire, you got law, you got National Guard, but you also have Unity Point. That's a really good point to kind of call out that this is a public safety radio system, but it's not just for what maybe the sheriff's department or the fire department. It really is for anything that, I mean, is emergency services needed. So whether that's county roads, whether that's again, DO.
As an example, Potawatomi County's had an 800 megahertz trunk radio system. It's been operational since 2010. It's not just limited to sheriff, rural fire, Council Bluffs, conservation, or excuse me, conservation's on the system. County engineers is on that radio system. And in 2012, during the narrow banding, which affected school districts as well, all the public schools with their radios, except for Council Bluffs, but the rural school districts all have their radios on that system as well too. And ISIX does have a couple school systems that are on the radio system now as well, on the statewide system.
And we weren't able to update the slide, but on Friday last week, Des Moines, the city of Des Moines just officially announced that they're going to be joining ISIX as well.
Wasn't Potawatomi County up there?
What's that?
Potawatomi County wasn't on the list.
You know, Potawatomi is actually tied to the Orion system, which is Douglas, Washington County, and Nebraska, and then Potawatomi County in Iowa. That's the core they're tied to, and have been since that system was put in.
So they'd be on the Nebraska map.
Yeah, they'd be part of the Nebraska map, but
Okay.
there are conversations as to how they integrate and tie in with the ISIX as well too.
Thank you.
You got it.
So this is just kind of a visualization of a map for the ISIX users, trying to show you it is across the state. The different colors are, and you can even Carol on here, are basically showing you the different levels of people that are either on the system now for interoperability or operability, or their applications are in with that ISIX board to be approved and are in process. So just kind of try, again, just more of a visual representation.
If I can, Brian, the approval for our access to ISIX wasn't putting the cart before the horse or anything of that nature. It was because we were buying radios that had access to the system, and we were getting a grant to do so. We needed to say we are going to be interoperability users of the system, and as soon as the system is live, we will do a reprogramming project with the law enforcement radio so they can access that system for interoperability. So that was the goal there, so just so that everybody
And-
understands how the process.
And again, that's at
that
no
works.
additional cost. That is just because there was forward thinking in purchasing the correct dual band TDMA radios to be able to take advantage of the system that's being put out there by the state. So at least at an interoperability level.
But you haven't turned up Carroll yet.
No, so the actual sites in Carroll, they're on in what we call a trunked mode, so they're basically working independently on their own. They will be linked back to the core, we were told this morning, within the next week. And so once that's done, then from the previous meeting that we had in the sheriff's department, get a couple of demo radios or even be able to potentially utilize some of the radios they have in hand to be able to test that coverage and really see. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, get it out there, test it, see what that mobile coverage is gonna be at this time. And then even by the fact, portable coverage for the county, just on what the state is already putting in without additional enhancements.
If you think back to the map that Brian had up there with all the dots on it, all of those black lines that were between those dots are microwave paths tying all the sites together. And you have rings that tie all of those sites back to that core. And that's, again, part of the system that the state is maintaining. And to Brian's point, Nebraska as an example, the typical cost for a radio to put onto that system is $22.50 per radio per month. And,
Not ongoing fees.
as an ongoing
Iowa will
fee,
not
and
have.
that doesn't exist in Iowa with the system. And so kind of to where Jason was alluding to, with the radios that were purchased for the sheriff's department, purchased for PD and all of law enforcement that are dual band capable through the 150 megahertz VHF on your local system today, but they're capable of operating that 700-800 megahertz statewide new radio system as well. LEA, mutual aid, those types of VHF systems will go away over time. The state has set aside regional talk groups that will be those interoperable, the ways that we interop between regions and counties, the 6 regions and statewide. And the radios are capable of doing that today. So that's part of having that MOA in place with the state, so that the radios that are in place today, those dual band radios, you can go ahead and load in those statewide interoperable talk groups, those regional interoperable talk groups, regardless of what you do as far as local enhancements. If you do nothing at all, that capability is there today.
So that was kind of the coverage, or kind of the high-level overview of the state system itself. I'll move into the actual Carroll County engineered solution design. So this was put together by our staff and our engineers, working with Jason, working with some of the users that were in the county to kind of know, well, what's some of the different nuances that Carroll County has seen or addressed or has had over the past versus maybe what would be different from other counties throughout the state. So again, this is just some of those highlighted areas that Jason had touched on, but they were basically validated again at that last 911 committee meeting in terms of you have to actually be on the specific channel depending on where you're at in the county to be able to talk on that channel or that talk group. The aging infrastructure, existing infrastructure, the aging radios, the last 2012 narrow banding that we talked about. That's a good point that we don't know what the FCC is going to do, or at least in terms of a date. They have said that they will narrow band again. To Jason's point then, basically forcing your hand to do something in terms of going the digital realm because the analog system won't work. The state system and going to a 700-800 megahertz TDMA system will make basically future-proof you from that. If you did choose to do that and they did narrow band again 6 months, 12 months, 12 years down the road, your hand wouldn't be forced any longer. You would have already future-proofed yourself and taken care of that issue. Paging coverage currently is limited to the actual towers that you have in the locations, and then any future interoperability both regionally or with the state systems as other counties in the state potentially move forward. So this is not a coverage map by any means, but it's more just a visual representation of showing where the existing repeater sites are now, both for law and for fire. I can let Jason, I guess, if you want to just point out in terms of the fire only versus.
Right, so Arcadia has a fire-only repeater that's installed there. That was over paging, that was done because of paging coverage issues for Arcadia and Halbert. They're the two departments that get paged off of that tower. The Carroll Tower is not repeated for fire. We do have a very old repeater that we installed on the Carroll Tower, but it's really only useful for the ambulance to use with their portables maybe. That's about the only use that we have for it now, and even that is pretty limited, just because it's not the greatest piece of equipment. It was an obsolete piece of equipment that was still working, that was taken out of service, that we pressed back into service to try to fill a gap that we had, or a desire that we had from the ambulance director at the time. Other than that, all the rest of them are have a fire and a law enforcement repeater associated with them.
And we show them in different colors up there, to kind of give you a visualization that it means if I'm going from one place to another, that means I've got to change my channel on my radio in order to be able to communicate in that area. It's not seamless together, it's not interconnected in any way.
So the actual engineered solution that we put together in the proposal, I mean, is adding 2 new 3-channel TDMA repeater sites, one utilizing what we call an existing vertical asset or an existing tower in Manning, and then one putting a brand new tower and radio equipment in Coon Rapids. 2 MCC 7500 consoles with 2 backup consolettes, a VHF paging system, 3 sites. All of this, I just want to make sure and point out, all of this is not set in stone. Obviously, we want to be able to have conversations, we can add stuff, subtract stuff, whatever, and to, I'm sure, where you're wanting to know the nuts and bolts in terms of that dictates the price as well. That, I mean, it's just more of, this is what would take care of the issues that we have had identified for us, but it can be moved and basically added to or taken away as needed on whatever decisions the county makes. We're here just to kind of share the information so you have a potential end goal. And then additional radios and repeaters for law and fire, EMS, and conservation throughout the state. County. So I'm going to go through some coverage maps here, just kind of set the table. So this is the mobile coverage. So this map right here is basically a small screenshot of that larger green map. You do nothing as of this fall, or technically, potentially as of the next week or so, the Carroll Essex state site comes on board. This is what the mobile coverage will be. So you're seeing there's just a little bit of white here in terms of not having that full 95% or 95 out of 100 times keying up. So this again is mobile coverage with a mobile radio, larger wattage in the vehicle, whatever vehicle that may be, throughout the county. So then this is adding the 2 additional sites in Manning and in Coon Rapids. As you can see from a mobile standpoint, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, add on a lot. It does fill in some holes, but not, I mean, night and day, black and white. And that is because the mobile coverage is actually fairly good already from the state system in the county. So here is a portable on-street coverage, and now you can start seeing some more kind of lack of coverage there, or lack of quality coverage. And again, this is now portable coverage, so we're talking about a handheld radio on the hip, outside of a vehicle, on the street, keying up and trying to speak. This is again Carroll only, you can see designated by red, not utilizing the additional sites. You can see a lot more of in the river area, more white. Adding these 2 sites really does fill in that portable on-street coverage that we're talking about. Now the next one, this is portable in-building coverage, and it's a 6 dB. So basically what that means is that a 6 dB in-building, that's a house. So we're talking about a home. So again, portable coverage, law, fire, whomever, outside of their vehicle, going into a home, whether it's for, I mean, saving someone from a fire or reporting to domestic disturbance, whatever, in terms of a law, or even just emergency services, an ambulance going to a home. This is where now you're starting to see that coverage shrink up in terms of from the state-only tower to where it really just leaves in-building or home residential coverage and definitely commercial coverage kind of open and not really any very good coverage inside. Whereas now you're adding these two sites, now you're starting to get that ring around both. Again, the whole point of this is to be able to get and cover your population areas. Where are your population densities within the county? And most of them, in terms of the top three, are Carroll, Coon Rapids, and Manning.
If I can, Brian, another rule of thumb that, that we set out when I started to discuss the coverage issues with them and where coverage was needed, is the rule of thumb that I directed was we need good in-building, commercial in-building coverage in every community where there's a school. That was kind of an easy rule of thumb to also get us to most of the industrial places within the county for the most part. Doesn't get all of them, but that's kind of the rule of thumb that we used when we started to discuss what that coverage need was.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where this kind of really does show you again, logistically and geographically, the differences between Carroll County and other counties, whether you have a state site or not. I mean, your population areas that are spread out in terms of southeast and southwest corners, whereas if there was just one in the middle, then you're not necessarily potentially needing the additional coverage on the peripheral.
And you'll see the circle is kind of flattened out in the baseline coverage. And the reason for that is the terrain. So flat ground is much easier to cover with radio signal. And as you get into more hilly terrain, that causes issues for the radio coverage when you're down in the valleys.
And this is, if you kind of see outside of your county, and why is this green over here when this Coon Rapids is not even lit up on this map? So this is the Springbrook site. So again, an additional state site in a different county, kind of somewhat bleeding in a little bit. So.
Can those radios be turned into a repeater?
So they can't be turned into a repeater. You can add a repeater to a vehicle. Correct. Yeah, to a vehicle, exactly.
So then that would present your coverage right where you need your coverage. Because if that vehicle is not going to be too far from most of those handhelds.
So a lot of the times, that's correct in terms of the vehicle itself. I mean, depending on how far into a cornfield or into a commercial
Right.
building you go.
Right.
Correct. The one thing about a repeater is that it's not a mission critical device. It's not made for that. A lot of the times that repeaters were chosen because it was the only option to be able to assist or help on an analog system or analog. Whereas now, other technology is there, or basically the state is putting in a backbone system so that you would potentially not have to rely on repeaters only. There are good uses for it here or there. To your point though, in terms of a vehicle, you're not always going to have a vehicle on site when you need it. And then also if you have multiple vehicles coming with multiple repeaters, then you're having competition between those repeaters. It doesn't lay a nice overlay for everyone to be able to be on outside of the vehicle or inside of a building. I mean, Dan or Bob, do you have anything to add?
So repeaters, we thought about repeaters when we purchased the radios that we used the grant to get.